The silver ship moved through space like a careful whisper, its hull gleaming under the distant light of Jupiter. Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of the Zenith Dawn, his 6 arms moving across control panels with practiced ease. His large, black eyes watched the screens that showed the 3rd planet from the system star. Earth, the humans called it. "Commander, we are detecting another vessel approaching from the inner system," reported Science Officer Zixinal from her station. Her voice carried the calm tone that all Corvani used when speaking. "It appears to be one of the human ships we have observed." Veltar nodded slowly. The Corvani had been watching this species for 3 months now, studying them from a safe distance. They seemed like most other young civilizations the Corvani had encountered. The humans had recently developed faster-than-light travel, built some basic space stations, and started exploring their local star system. Nothing unusual about them at all. "Bring us to yellow alert status," Veltar commanded. "Prepare the translation. Systems, if they wish to communicate, we should be ready." The human ship was smaller than the Zenith Dawn, but moved with surprising grace. Its hull was painted white with blue markings, and strange symbols were written along its side. The Corvani computers quickly translated the words, U.E.'s New Horizon. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of the New Horizon, watching the alien vessel on his main screen. It was unlike anything humans had ever built. The ship seemed to flow like water, with no sharp edges or straight lines. Beautiful, but strange. "Captain, they're broadcasting on multiple frequencies," reported Communications Officer Amy Brooks. "The signal is incredibly complex. Our computers are having trouble making sense of it." "Keep working on it," Morrison replied. He looked around his bridge at his crew. Pilot Lisa Carter was running system checks, while engineer Tony Rodriguez monitored the ship's power levels. These people had been with him for 2 years, and he trusted them completely. The New Horizon had been on a routine patrol mission when they detected the alien ship. Morrison knew this moment would change everything for humanity. First contact with an alien species was something humans had dreamed about for centuries. "Captain, I'm getting something," Amy announced. "The signal is starting to make sense. I think they're trying to establish communication protocols." "Put it on speaker," Morrison ordered. A strange voice filled the bridge. The words were clearly not human, but somehow they could understand them. "Human vessel, this is Commander Veltar of the Corvani research ship Zenith Dawn. We wish to establish peaceful contact with your species." Morrison looked at his crew and saw excitement in their eyes. He activated the communication system. "Commander Veltar, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship New Horizon. We are honored to meet you and your people." "We have been observing your species for some time," Veltar replied. "We represent the Corvani Confederation, a peaceful alliance of many species throughout this galaxy. We study and catalog new civilizations. As they develop space travel, we would be very interested in learning about your confederation," Morrison said. "Perhaps we could arrange a meeting between our peoples." Within hours, both ships had moved to a neutral position between Jupiter and Saturn. The Corvani had prepared a small shuttle that could dock with the New Horizon. Morrison selected 3 crew members to join him for the historic meeting: Lisa, Tony, and Amy. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and the first aliens humans had ever met stepped aboard their ship. Commander Veltar was tall and thin, with gray skin that seemed to shimmer slightly. His 6 arms moved independently, and his large black eyes took in everything around him. Science Officer Zixinol was shorter, but moved with the same careful grace. "Welcome to the New Horizon," Morrison said, extending his hand in the traditional human greeting. Veltar studied the gesture for a moment, then reached out with one of his arms to shake Morrison's hand. "Thank you, Captain Morrison. This is indeed a historic moment for both our species." The meeting took place in the ship's main conference room. The Corvani were fascinated by human technology and asked many questions about Earth's development. They seemed particularly interested in human social structures and decision-making processes. Your species appears to have developed space travel at roughly the expected timeline, Zixanel observed. Most civilizations achieve faster-than-light travel within 5,000 years of developing agriculture. Humans have done so in approximately 10,000 years, which is quite normal. We've had our challenges, Morrison admitted. Wars, conflicts, disagreements about how to move forward. But somehow we always manage to work things out. Interesting, Veltar said. The Corvani learned early in our development that logic and careful planning prevent most conflicts. We have not experienced war in over 50,000 years. Lisa looked impressed. That's amazing. How do you handle disagreements? We use mathematical models to determine the most logical solution, Zixanol explained. Emotion and impulsive behavior are controlled through training and mental discipline. It has served us well. The conversation continued for several hours. The Corvani shared information about their confederation, which included over 200 species spread across thousands of star systems. They had laws, trade agreements, and scientific cooperation on a scale humans could barely imagine. Your species shows promise, Veltar said finally. With proper guidance, humans could potentially join our confederation in a few hundred years. We'd be honored to work toward that goal, Morrison replied. As the meeting was winding down, Tony mentioned that the crew had been having a few beers before the encounter. The Corvani translation system rendered this as consuming fermented grain beverages for relaxation purposes. You consume alcohol before important meetings? Zixanel asked, seeming confused. Just a couple of beers, Morrison said with a smile. Nothing too serious. It helps us relax and think more clearly. The Corvani exchanged glances. Their record showed that most species avoided mind-altering substances during critical situations. They made a note to study this human behavior pattern more carefully. The first meeting between humans and the Corvani ended with agreements to establish regular contact and cultural exchange programs. As the aliens returned to their ship, Morrison felt good about humanity's first steps into the larger galaxy. None of them knew that this simple mention of beer would soon become the key to understanding something unique about human nature that would change everything. 3 weeks had passed since the first meeting between humans and the Corvani. The alien research team had built a small observation post on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. From this position, they could watch human activities throughout the solar system without interfering with their development. Dr. Zixanel worked at her station, studying the data they had collected about human behavior. The humans were interesting, but seemed to fit the normal patterns of young civilizations. They had the usual mix of curiosity, ambition, and caution that most species showed when they first reached space. She was reviewing a report about human social structures when an urgent alarm sounded throughout the station. Commander Veltar. Voice came over the communication system. All senior staff report to the main chamber immediately. We have received an emergency transmission from Earth. Zixanel hurried to the main chamber, where other Corvani scientists were already gathering. The large screen at the front of the room showed a human face she recognized. It was Admiral Helen Wright, one of Earth's senior space commanders. Commander Veltar, we need your help, Wright said, her voice tight with worry. 3 hours ago, our deep space monitors detected a massive asteroid heading directly for Earth. We missed it before because it's made of some kind of unusual material that doesn't reflect light normally. Veltar leaned forward in his chair. What are the specifications of this object? It's roughly 15 kilometers wide and moving at incredible speed, Wright replied. Our calculations show it will impact Earth in exactly 6 days. We've tried. Everything we can think of, but our weapons and deflection systems aren't powerful enough to stop something this large. The Corvani scientists immediately began running their own calculations. The numbers appeared on screens throughout the chamber, and Zixanal felt a chill as she read them. The asteroid was indeed massive, and it was moving far too fast for conventional deflection methods. "We are analyzing the data now," Veltar told Wright. "We will contact you as soon as we have a solution." The transmission ended, and the chamber fell silent except for the sound of computers processing information. For the next 2 hours, the Corvani worked frantically to find a way to save Earth. They tried every deflection technique known to their science, but the results were always the same. Finally, Veltar called the team together. "I regret to inform you that even our most advanced technology cannot solve this problem in 6 days. Our most powerful deflection systems would require at least 3 weeks to safely redirect an asteroid of this size and speed." Zixanal looked at the data one more time, hoping she had made an error. But the numbers were clear. "Commander, should we begin preparing evacuation protocols for selected human populations?" "Yes," Veltar replied sadly. "We can save, perhaps, a few thousand humans, but the majority of their species will not survive this impact." The call to Earth was one of the most difficult conversations Veltar had ever had. Admiral Wright listened in silence as he explained that the situation was hopeless. The Corvani could evacuate some humans, but there was no way to save their planet. "I understand," Wright said finally. "We appreciate your offer to help some of our people survive, but I need to ask you to give us time to try our own solutions first." "Admiral, we have run every possible calculation," Veltar said gently. "There is no logical solution to this problem. The asteroid is simply too large and moving too fast." "Maybe," Wright replied, "but humans don't always use logic to solve problems. Give us 24 hours. The transmission ended, leaving the Corvani confused. What could humans possibly do that advanced alien science could not? Their technology was thousands of years behind Corvani capabilities. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison had received the news while his crew was gathered in the New Horizons recreation area. The mood was heavy as they discussed the approaching disaster. Amy Brooks was quietly crying while Lisa Carter stared at the floor. Tony Rodriguez kept running his hands through his hair, a habit he had when stressed. "So that's it then," Lisa said finally. "Earth gets destroyed, and there's nothing we can do about it." "The Corvani offered to evacuate some people," Amy said. "Maybe we should focus on helping with that." Morrison had been silent during the discussion, drinking his beer and thinking. The Corvani were probably right that conventional methods wouldn't work. But Morrison had learned during his years in space that sometimes conventional methods weren't enough. He stood up suddenly, looking at his crew with a strange expression. "Hold my beer," he said, handing his bottle to Tony. The words seemed to hang in the air. Tony took the beer automatically, but he was watching Morrison with growing concern. "Captain, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about that mining operation we saw last month," Morrison said. "The one where they were breaking up asteroids for mineral extraction. They used nuclear charges placed inside the rocks." "That was tiny asteroids," Lisa said. "This thing is 15 kilometers across, so we use bigger charges," Morrison replied. "And we place them deeper inside." Amy looked up from her tears. "Jake, the radiation alone would kill anyone who got close enough to plant charges inside something that big." "Not if we flew a ship straight into the center of it," Morrison said. "Load up a mining vessel with enough nuclear explosives to split the asteroid in half. Fly it right into the core and detonate everything at once." The crew stared at him in silence. Finally, Tony spoke. "That's suicide, Captain. Nobody could survive flying into the center of an asteroid." "Probably not," Morrison agreed. "But if we split it into smaller pieces, Earth's existing defense systems could handle the fragments, the planet would survive. The survival probability would be less than 1%, Lisa said. The navigation alone would be impossible. You'd have to fly through debris fields, unstable gravity, and solid rock. Morrison smiled. Since when do we worry about impossible odds? We're humans. We do impossible things all the time. He activated the ship's communication system and sent a message to Earth Command. This is Captain Morrison of the New Horizon. I'm requesting permission to attempt an asteroid intercept mission using nuclear mining charges. The response came back within minutes. Captain Morrison, this is Admiral Wright. The Corvani have already informed us that deflection is impossible. Are you proposing something different? Yes, Admiral. I want to fly a ship into the asteroid's center and blow it apart from the inside. It's dangerous, but it might work. There was a long pause. Captain, the survival probability for such a mission would be virtually zero. I understand that, Admiral. But zero chance for the crew is better than zero chance for Earth. Another pause. Very well, Captain. You have permission to proceed. God help you all. Morrison turned to his crew. I'm not ordering anyone to come. With me, this is volunteer only. Lisa stood up first. I'm in, Captain. Someone has to fly this crazy mission. Tony nodded. You'll need an engineer to keep the ship running. Amy wiped her eyes. And someone to handle communications with Earth. Within hours, word of the mission had spread throughout the human space fleet. Volunteers began arriving at the staging area, faster than they could be processed. Experienced miners, demolition experts, and pilots all wanted to join the mission. Morrison selected a crew of 12 people, including veteran miners Pete Johnson and Danny Walsh, demolitions expert Carol Martinez, and navigator Steve Parker. Each person understood that they were volunteering for a one-way mission. The Corvani watched these preparations with fascination and horror. They could not understand why humans would volunteer for certain death. When Veltar asked Morrison to explain, the human captain simply said, because someone has to try. The mining vessel Defiant Heart was loaded with more nuclear explosives than had ever been assembled in one place. The ship's cargo bay was packed with charges powerful enough to split a small moon. Morrison's crew worked around the clock, too. Prepare for launch. On the night before the mission, the crew gathered in the ship's common area. Instead of showing fear or despair, they played poker, told jokes, and shared stories about their families. Lisa organized a betting pool on who would win the card game. Tony taught some of the miners how to play guitar. The Corvani observers were completely baffled by this behavior. These humans were facing certain death, yet they acted as if they were preparing for a vacation. Launch day arrived with Earth's population watching from around the world. The Defiant Heart lifted off from the staging area and began its journey toward the approaching asteroid. Morrison's final transmission to Earth became legendary. See you on the other side, Earth. Don't wait up. The Corvani followed the mission. In their advanced ships, ready to document what they believed would be humanity's noble but doomed final gesture. They had calculated every possible outcome, and none of them ended with human survival. But as they watched the Defiant Heart disappear into the darkness of space, heading toward an impossible mission, they began to realize that they might not understand humans as well as they thought. The Defiant Heart moved through space toward the massive asteroid that threatened Earth. Captain Morrison sat in the pilot's seat, his hands steady on the controls, despite the impossible nature of their mission. Around him, his crew of 12. Volunteers worked with calm efficiency, as if they were heading to a routine mining operation instead of certain death. Distance to target, 2 million kilometers in closing, reported navigator Steve Parker from his station. The asteroid is even bigger than we thought. Our sensors are showing it's more like 18 kilometers across. That just means we need to go deeper, Morrison replied. Carol, how are our charges looking? Demolitions expert Carol Martinez checked her instruments. All nuclear devices are armed and ready, Captain. We've got enough firepower to crack a small planet. The question is whether we can get them to the right position. The Corvani ships followed at a safe distance, their advanced sensors recording every detail of the human mission. Commander Veltar watched the displays with growing amazement. The humans were actually maintaining course toward the asteroid, showing no signs of fear or hesitation. Commander, their ship is not designed for this type of mission, reported Zixinal. The hull cannot withstand the radiation levels they will encounter inside the asteroid. The gravity fields will tear their ship apart long before they reach the center. I know, Veltar replied, yet they continue forward. I am beginning to think we do not understand these humans as well as we believed. On the Defiant Heart, pilot Lisa Carter was running constant calculations on their approach vector. Captain, we're coming up on the asteroid's debris field. The outer layer is already breaking apart from its own rotation. Take us in slowly, Morrison ordered. We need to find the best entry point. The asteroid filled their view screen like a small planet. Its surface was dark and rough, with deep cracks running across its length. Chunks of rock the size of buildings were constantly breaking off and spinning away into space. There, Morrison pointed to a large crater near the asteroid's center. That looks like our best bet for penetration. Engineer Tony Rodriguez looked up from his console. Captain, the ship's hull is already showing stress fractures from the radiation. We're not going to survive this approach. We don't need to survive the approach, Morrison said calmly. We just need to survive long enough to complete the mission. Miner Pete Johnson was monitoring the asteroid's composition. The outer layer is mostly iron and nickel, but the sensors are showing something strange deeper inside. There's a hollow area about 5 kilometers down. Perfect, Morrison said. That's where we'll place our charges. The Defiant Heart entered the asteroid's debris field, dodging chunks of rock while flying toward the surface. The ship's hull groaned under the stress of the gravitational forces, and several warning alarms began sounding. Hull breach in Section 7, reported Danny Walsh from the engineering station. We're losing atmosphere. Seal it off, Morrison. Ordered. We're committed now. The ship struck the asteroid's surface and began drilling through solid rock. The mining equipment had been modified for this mission, creating a tunnel just wide enough for the ship to pass through. Behind them, the tunnel collapsed, sealing their path. We're inside the asteroid, Lisa announced. Depth is 1 kilometer and increasing. The ship shuddered as it forced its way through the rocky interior. The hull was taking massive damage, but the nuclear charges remained secure in the cargo bay. Morrison kept the ship moving forward, using every bit of his piloting skill to navigate through the unstable interior. 2 kilometers depth, Steve called out. The gravity is getting stronger. The asteroid is denser than we expected. 3 kilometers, Carol reported. We're approaching the optimal detonation depth. The Corvani watched in amazement as the human ship disappeared into the asteroid's interior. Their sensors could barely track the vessel's progress through the solid rock. They are actually doing it, Zixinal said in wonder. They are navigating through conditions that should be impossible for their technology. 4 kilometers depth, came the report from the Defiant Heart. The ship is falling apart, but we're still moving forward. Morrison could see the strain on his crew's faces, but none of them showed any sign of giving up. They had volunteered for this mission, knowing they would not survive, yet they worked with the same dedication they would show on any other job. 5 kilometers, Lisa announced. We're reaching the hollow area Pete detected. This looks like our target zone. The ship broke through into a vast cavern inside the asteroid. The hollow space was filled with strange crystalline formations that glowed with an eerie light. Morrison piloted the ship to the center of the chamber. "This is it," he announced. "Carol, prepare the charges for manual detonation. All charges armed and ready," Carol confirmed. 30 seconds to detonation. Morrison activated the ship's communication system for one final transmission to Earth. "This is Captain Morrison of the Defiant Heart. We have reached the target zone and are preparing to detonate charges. It has been an honor to serve with this crew and to serve Earth." The transmission was weak but clear. On Earth, billions of people watched and waited. In the Corvani ships, the alien observers held their breath. 20 seconds, Carol announced. 10 seconds, she continued. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The explosion was beyond anything the Corvani had ever witnessed. The nuclear charges detonated simultaneously, creating a chain reaction that tore through the asteroid's core. The massive rock split apart exactly as Morrison had predicted, breaking into thousands of smaller fragments. The Corvani sensors detected no survivors from the Defiant Heart. The ship and its crew had been vaporized in the explosion they had created, but their sacrifice had worked perfectly. The asteroid fragments were now small enough for Earth's defense systems to handle. "Impossible," Veltar whispered as he watched the data. They actually succeeded. Over the next 6 hours, Earth's orbital defense platforms methodically destroyed the asteroid fragments. What had been a planet-killing threat was reduced to harmless debris that burned up in the atmosphere like meteor showers. The Corvani could not understand what they had witnessed. According to every calculation, the mission should have failed. The humans had no logical reason to believe they could succeed. Yet somehow they had accomplished the impossible. "Commander," Zixanil said, "I believe we need to revise our assessment of human capabilities." "Yes," Veltar agreed. "These humans are not like other species we have encountered. They possess something we do not understand." The phrase, "hold my beer," had become a subject of intense study among the Corvani scientists. They now realized that those 3 words represented something unique about human nature. When humans said, "hold my beer," they were not just accepting a challenge. They were declaring their intention to attempt something that logic said was impossible. The Corvani had spent thousands of years avoiding risk and following logical solutions. They had created a peaceful, stable civilization by never attempting anything that had a high probability of failure. But humans were different. They seemed to thrive on impossible challenges. News of the mission spread throughout the Corvani Confederation. Other alien species read the reports with amazement. A young civilization had just accomplished something that the galaxy's most advanced species said could not be done. Captain Morrison and his crew had become heroes, not just on Earth, but throughout the galaxy. Their sacrifice had saved their planet and taught the universe something new about the human spirit. The Corvani began to realize that they had discovered something extraordinary. These humans might be technologically primitive, but they possessed a form of courage that allowed them to succeed where logic said success was impossible. As the last of the asteroid fragments burned up in Earth's atmosphere, the Corvani knew that their understanding of humanity had to change. The phrase, "hold my beer," was not just a casual expression. It was a declaration of war against impossible odds. And somehow, impossibly, the humans had won. The Corvani High Council Chamber was the most impressive room in their civilization. Carved from a single piece of crystal that had taken 3 centuries to shape, it could hold 1,000 delegates from across the galaxy. Today, it was filled with representatives from 200 different species, all gathered to discuss the same topic. Humans. Commander Veltar stood at the center of the chamber, his report displayed on screens throughout the room. The data was clear and disturbing. Humans had accomplished something that every advanced civilization in the galaxy had declared impossible. The asteroid was 18 kilometers in diameter, Veltar explained to the assembled delegates. It was composed of dense iron and nickel, moving at 47 kilometers per second. Our most advanced deflection systems would have required 23 days to safely redirect such an object. High Counselor Murdoch, the eldest member of the Corvani leadership, leaned forward in his chair. Yet these humans accomplished the task in 6 days using primitive nuclear weapons. Correct, Veltar replied. But the method they used should have been impossible. The probability of success was calculated at less than 0.3%. Dr. Zixenel stepped forward to present her analysis. Honored counselors, we have been studying the phrase the humans used before attempting this mission. Hold. My beer appears to be a cultural trigger that activates what we can only describe as probability-defying determination. The delegates stirred uneasily. The idea that any species could defy probability itself was deeply disturbing to civilizations that had built their entire cultures around logical analysis and careful planning. Explain this phenomenon, requested Counselor Thywin of the Altarian. Species. Zixenel activated her presentation. We have reviewed human history and found countless examples of individuals accomplishing impossible tasks after expressing some variation of this phrase. They call it beating the odds or achieving the impossible. The examples filled the screens around the chamber. Humans had broken seemingly unbreakable barriers in athletics, survived unsurvivable disasters, and created technological breakthroughs that their own scientists had declared impossible. This pattern appears throughout their civilization, Zixenel continued. When faced with a challenge that logic says cannot be overcome, humans often respond by attempting it anyway. Their success rate in these situations is far higher than mathematical probability would predict. High Counselor Murdoch was troubled. Are you suggesting that humans possess some form of supernatural ability? Not supernatural, Zixenel replied. But they do seem to possess a unique form of courage that allows them to function effectively in situations where logical analysis would counsel despair. 3 days later, a new human delegation arrived at the Corvani observation post. Admiral Helen Wright commanded the group, accompanied by Colonel Rick Barnes and Dr. Sandra Phillips. The humans had requested a follow-up meeting to discuss expanded cooperation between their species. The meeting took place in the same conference room where Captain Morrison had first met the Corvani. But the atmosphere was completely different. Now, the aliens looked at their human guests with a mixture of respect and nervous fascination. Admiral Wright, Veltar began. We must confess that recent events have caused us to reconsider our assessment of human capabilities. Oh, you mean the asteroid mission? Wright replied casually. That was good work by Morrison and his crew. They were brave people. Brave, yes, Veltar said. But our analysis suggests it was more than courage. The mission succeeded despite probability calculations that predicted failure. Wright looked puzzled. Well, sure, it was dangerous. But dangerous doesn't mean impossible. Humans have been doing dangerous things for thousands of years. Dr. Phillips leaned forward. Commander, may I ask what your people do when faced with seemingly impossible challenges? We analyze the problem logically, Zixenel replied. We calculate the probability of success using various approaches. If the probability is too low, we seek alternative solutions or accept that the challenge cannot be overcome. Interesting, Phillips said. Humans tend to approach impossible challenges differently. We often attempt them anyway, especially if the stakes are high enough. Colonel Barnes nodded. It's like Admiral Wright always says, you don't know something is impossible until you try it and fail. Wright smiled. Actually, even then you don't know for sure. Maybe you just need to try harder next time. The Corvani exchanged glances. This casual attitude toward impossible odds was exactly what they had observed during the asteroid mission. Humans seem to treat probability as a suggestion rather than a law. Admiral, Veltar said carefully, we have been studying human history. We found records of your species accomplishing many things that should have been impossible. The first, powered flight, reaching your moon, various athletic achievements that broke previous limitations. Those are good examples, Wright agreed. Humans have always been good at pushing boundaries. But how do you succeed when logic says you should fail? Zixanal asked. Wright thought for a moment. I guess we just don't accept failure as easily as other species might. When someone tells us something can't be done, we tend to take that as a challenge rather than a fact. To demonstrate this point, Wright asked about the most difficult navigational challenge the Corvani had ever encountered. They described an asteroid field surrounding a valuable mineral deposit. The field was so dense and unpredictable that no Corvani pilot had ever successfully navigated through it. How long have your people been trying to reach this deposit? Wright asked. Approximately 200 years, Veltar replied. We have lost 17 ships in the attempt. Wright stood up with a familiar expression. Hold my beer, she said, handing her drink to Colonel Barnes. The Corvani scientists immediately began recording everything. They had learned to pay attention. When humans used that phrase, within 2 hours, Wright was piloting a Corvani shuttle toward the impossible asteroid field. The alien observers watched in amazement as she navigated through spaces that their best pilots had declared impassable. Her approach was completely different from standard Corvani techniques, where Corvani pilots would calculate safe routes and follow predetermined paths. Wright seemed to improvise constantly. She made split-second decisions that appeared illogical, but somehow worked perfectly. She treated the asteroid field like a living thing that could be understood and outsmarted. How is she doing this? Zixanal asked as she watched Wright's shuttle weave through the deadly obstacles. She's not following any logical navigation pattern, another scientist replied. She's just flying. Wright reached the mineral deposit. In less than 3 hours, accomplishing what 2 centuries of Corvani science had declared impossible. When she returned to the observation post, she seemed surprised by the alien's amazement. That was a fun challenge, she said. The key was not thinking too hard about it. Sometimes you just have to trust your instincts and go for it. The Corvani realized they were witnessing something fundamental about human nature. These people possessed an ability to succeed in impossible situations, precisely because they refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. Admiral, Veltar said slowly, we believe your species represents something unique in the galaxy. We have encountered many civilizations, but none that approach challenges the way humans do. What do you mean? Wright asked. When you say, hold my beer, you are not just accepting a challenge. You are declaring your intention to prove that impossible things can be accomplished through determination and courage. Wright smiled. I guess that's one way to look at it. We prefer to think of it as not giving up easily. But the Corvani now understood that it was much more than that. Humans possessed a unique form of courage that allowed them to function effectively. In situations where logical analysis would predict failure, they had somehow learned to succeed by refusing to accept the limitations that probability imposed. The phrase "hold my beer" had become a subject of intense study throughout the Corvani Confederation. Scientists from dozens of species were trying to understand how humans consistently achieved impossible results. The galaxy was beginning to realize that humanity represented something new and extraordinary. These young people from a small planet had demonstrated an ability to succeed where advanced civilizations failed, and they did it all with the simple philosophy that impossible things were just challenges that nobody had solved yet. 6 months after the asteroid crisis, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Corvani Confederation had extended a formal invitation for humanity to join their galactic community. But the relationship was unlike anything they had experienced before. Admiral Helen Wright stood in the main conference room of the newly constructed Morrison Station, humanity's first permanent outpost in deep space. The station orbited Jupiter and served as the headquarters for human operations throughout the galaxy. Named after the hero who had saved Earth, it had become a symbol of humanity's new role among the stars. "Admiral, we have another impossible situation," reported Colonel Rick Barnes as he entered the room. "The Corvani are requesting human assistance with a problem their scientists cannot solve." Wright looked up from her reports. "What kind of problem?" "A spatial anomaly near the Rigel system," Barnes explained. "It's growing larger and threatening to destabilize the entire region. The Corvani have been studying it for 3 months, and they say there's no logical solution." Wright smiled. "When did no logical solution become a reason to call humans?" "Ever since the Morrison Institute for Impossible Solutions was established," Barnes replied. "We've handled 17 supposedly impossible problems in the last 4 months." The Morrison Institute had been created by the Corvani as a joint human-alien research facility. When conventional science failed to solve a problem, the galaxies, most advanced civilizations now turn to humans for what they called probability-defying solutions. Dr. Sandra Phillips entered the room carrying a data tablet. "Admiral, I've been reviewing the Rigel situation. The spatial anomaly is unlike anything we've encountered before. It's creating tiers in space-time that are expanding at an exponential rate. How long before it becomes dangerous?" Wright asked. "The Corvani calculate that it will reach critical mass in 48 hours, Phillips replied. "After that, it could potentially destroy several star systems." Wright studied the data on Phillips' tablet. The anomaly looked like a massive wound in space itself, with reality breaking down around its edges. The Corvani had tried every known method to stabilize it, but nothing had worked. "What's their best theory about what caused it?" Wright asked. "They think it was created by an experimental faster-than-light drive that malfunctioned," Barnes said. "The ship was destroyed, but the anomaly it created keeps growing." Wright nodded. "Have they tried going inside it?" Phillips looked surprised. "Admiral, that would be suicide. The radiation levels alone would kill anyone who got close." "But have they tried?" Wright pressed. "No," Phillips admitted. "Their computers say it's impossible to survive inside the anomaly." Wright set down the tablet and looked at her staff. "Get me a ship and a volunteer crew. We're going to take a look at this thing ourselves." Within hours, Wright was aboard the exploration vessel New Discovery with a crew of 20 volunteers. The ship was equipped with the latest human and Corvani technology, including experimental shielding systems that might protect them from the anomaly's effects. The journey to the Rigel system took 6 hours. When they arrived, Wright could see why the Corvani were worried. The spatial anomaly was enormous, stretching across millions of kilometers of space. It looked like a giant crack in reality itself, with strange lights and distortions swirling around its edges. "Admiral, the Corvani fleet is maintaining position at a safe distance," reported Navigator Ben Clark. "They're requesting that we stay outside the danger zone." "Tell them we appreciate their concern," Wright replied. "But we need to get closer to understand what we're dealing with." The New Discovery approached the anomaly slowly. The ship's sensors detected massive energy fluctuations and dangerous radiation levels. As they got closer, the crew could see that space itself was twisted and broken around the anomaly. "The readings are off the charts," reported Chief Engineer Maria Santos. "Our shields are holding, but barely." Wright studied the data streaming across her screens. The anomaly seemed to be feeding on space-time itself, growing stronger as it consumed more of the fabric of reality. The Corvani were right that conventional methods wouldn't work. "Admiral, called communications officer. Paul Richards, the Corvani are warning us that we're approaching the point of no return. They say no ship has ever survived getting this close. Wright looked at her crew. These people had volunteered for another impossible mission, just like Morrison's crew had done 6 months ago. They knew the risks, but they were willing to try. Anyway, Maria, can our shields handle going inside the anomaly? Wright asked. I don't know, Santos replied honestly. The computers say no, but they've been wrong before. Wright made her decision. She stood up and looked at her crew with the same expression Morrison had worn when he first said those famous words. Hold my beer, she said, handing her drink to Colonel Barnes. The crew immediately understood what she meant. They had all heard the stories about Morrison's mission. They knew that Hold My Beer was humanity's declaration of war against impossible odds. Take us in, Wright ordered. The new discovery entered the spatial anomaly, and immediately everything changed. The ship was surrounded by swirling colors and impossible geometries. Space and time seemed to twist around them in ways that hurt to look at. Shields at 60%, Santos reported. But we're still intact. Wright watched the readings carefully. The anomaly wasn't just a tear in space-time. It was a wound that was trying to heal itself. But something was preventing the healing process from working properly. There, she said, pointing to a section of the anomaly that looked different from the rest. That's the center. That's where the original ship was destroyed. The crew piloted their ship toward the center of the anomaly. The journey was like flying through a nightmare of broken physics and twisted reality. But somehow they made it to the source of the problem. What they found was the remains of the alien ship that had created the anomaly. The vessel was trapped in a feedback loop, its malfunctioning drive system continuing to tear holes in space-time, even though the ship itself was destroyed. We need to shut down that drive system, Wright said, but we'll have to do it manually. Mission was incredibly dangerous. The crew had to leave their ship and work in the heart of the anomaly itself. The radiation levels were lethal, and the twisted space-time made navigation nearly impossible, but they did it anyway. Working together, they managed to shut down the malfunctioning drive system. The moment it stopped, the anomaly began to collapse in on itself. Space-time started healing, reality reasserted itself, and the danger passed. The new discovery escaped just as the anomaly finally closed. Wright and her crew had accomplished something that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had declared impossible. News of the mission spread throughout the Corvani Confederation. Other species read the reports with amazement and growing respect. Humans had once again proven that impossible things could be accomplished through courage and determination. The phrase, "Hold my beer," had become legendary throughout the galaxy. When other species encountered seemingly impossible problems, they now knew who to call. The humans would find a way to solve it, even if logic said it couldn't be done. Wright returned to Morrison Station as a hero, but she knew that her success, like Morrison's before her, was just another example of what humans could accomplish when they refused to accept defeat. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't superior technology or intelligence. It was their willingness to attempt the impossible. When someone said those 3 words that had changed everything, "Hold my beer," and somewhere in the vastness of space, new impossible challenges were waiting for the next human to stand up and prove that nothing was truly impossible after all.